Welcome into today's show, guys. We are going to spend some time on the NFLPA debacle, really summarizing that, talking through with Peter Moses what exactly went down. For those of you who sort of have side-eyed that situation, I think it's at least important to know what the debate is, where it sits, and whether the NFL can ever rectify from the player side, the important details of a healthy union. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time at the end of the show for subscribers on the tight end position, the preview of that heading into training camp, a very important, perhaps transition year for that position with, a much more talented group. So let's get started with the latest Brownsville Breakdown podcast right now. Welcome, everybody, to Tuesday edition of Brownsville Breakdown. I'm Jake Burns. Before we get started, housekeeping items. If you're not with Brownsville Breakdown, it's camp week, guys. Make sure to come over and join us. We have fantastic stuff going up in the film room department. Jerome Ford, Jerry Judy. We got newsletters. We got podcasts going out. If you don't want ads in your podcast, you want to see the full film room, all of it, make sure to join us. We got a little deal going for 10% off to start the season. Take advantage of that. Lock in the year. Lock in the entire offseason. You'll be here with us through the important cycles of the offseason. So join us. And if nothing else, tell somebody about us, a friend, somebody else, in your family. Gift something to somebody else. We'll take whatever we can get to join. This is the best Browns community online. We believe that. And again, we are on the socials, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We're obviously here on YouTube. So yeah, join us. We would love that for you. Well, I'm here with Peter Moses. We're going to talk about the NFLPA, debacle, I think is probably the way to put it, man. Like, I have been side-eyeing it. I was on vacation and then, getting back and making content. I just haven't had time to catch up with it. So you and I had the idea that we would get together and just lock in what on earth has gone on here, because it feels bigger than the NFL wants it to be, right? I think that's the way to put it, man. It's bigger than they want it to be, but it's also not as big as it probably should be, because it feels like these guys, the representation of the players, is doing a really piss poor job, and it's probably impacting why the NFL gets everything they want out of every season. 18 games is going to be here before we know it. They're going to be playing in Canada. They're going to be playing in Russia. Well, they're going to be everywhere, man. But I don't know. You tell me. You're way more well versed. The Pablo Torre podcast, and then JC Treader put out his own little piece as well, Peter. So, I'm happy you're here, obviously, but I'd love for you to walk us through a little bit of this.
I'll do my best. I think the big thing to first think about, Jake, is the NFL is the king of sports. And
yes, they're the baseball of 50 years ago, which is ironic that baseball has lost their stronghold, but that's neither here nor there. Different discussion. But yes, they're doing the America's pastime stuff where you're just like, I don't really care we're just going to watch it. Whatever happens,
doesn't matter.
I'm just gonna watch it.
Yeah. You just put it on. I mean, they're playing on Christmas Wednesdays now. Yep. Everything is on the table. And this also comes at a time when the cable bundle, traditional television as we know it, is kind of dying. Colbert just got canceled, was losing a lot of money. This could be the end of a lot of late night shows, a lot of standard sitcoms, multicams,
F1 on Apple just making a ton of money in the movie department all of a sudden. What's going on, man?
It's
I know you loved it.
Yeah, I did not love F1.
But you liked the IMAX drive. You had to love the driving. You had to love that stuff. That was great.
Yes, I love the vroom vrooming. Such fun vroom vrooming. Okay, I think overall, though, it's important that just cable television is dissolving. Where's all the money going? It's into sports. It's into NFL. This is big money. This is big television. This is the biggest entertainment thing that we have in America, and probably one of our biggest exports from an entertainment perspective outside of F1 and whatever Mission Impossible comes out next. So this has been a really interesting story. The way it's been revealed has kind of been a little bit of its own kind of Chinatown style film noir mystery thing, where the onion has just been kind of peeled back and there's been twists and turns. Personally, I had some pretty harsh thoughts and criticisms of JC Treader last week that I don't feel like after hearing from him this week. But really where all this stems and all this goes back to is Deshaun Watson getting a guarantee from Jimmy Haslam for his entire contract. And that pissed off all the owners. You might go back and hear Steve Bisciotti complain about it publicly.
I will say, too, the Texans are experiencing some of that right now because they gave Jaden Higgins the first fully guaranteed second-round contract. And that made the Browns sign Carson Schlesinger to a fully guaranteed deal and then set off the course of, it's training camp week, and 30 second-round picks haven't been signed because they all want guaranteed money. So yeah, I mean, this is the world where that's a smaller scale, obviously, but still very impactful for the draft, where teams think they can. We're watching the Bengals nickel and dime language with their first round picks. Yeah, I'm just not to interrupt you there, but yeah, like this stuff matters, and it's important to the story. Is when someone upsets the locomotive.
It's really important. Yeah, it's really important, and these players and their agents and lawyers are going to continue to get more guaranteed and clawed at that, and the owners have done everything they can for a really long time in collective bargaining and otherwise to discourage that kind of guaranteed money. Because at the end of the day, they don't make a lot of money when these guys all get hurt and are going to be paying these dudes to just not be playing football. That's not what they want. They want more money and cheaper teams and more revenue. So Watson signs his contract, and really is where this Pablo Torre finds out podcast starts, is there was a sealed, unknown to before a couple weeks ago, arbitration that took place between the NFL and the Players Association that accused the owners of colluding to prohibit more guaranteed contracts. And after, you'll remember, Lamar Jackson basically demanded anybody else sign him other than the Ravens, and no one made an offer to him. Russell Wilson also basically left right after a lot of guaranteed money on the table after the Deshaun Watson contract, and similar things with Mahomes and Burrow as well. And basically through text messages and exchange with owners in the league, the NFLPA made a really good case that the owners were colluding. Now, the arbitrator actually ended up siding with the owners, but there's a lot of really nasty stuff in there about the collusion of the owners to kind of prevent the players from getting these more guarantees. The weird thing that happened was both sides decided to seal the decision of this arbitration when it really could have helped the players and the union. Union members didn't even know this existed. And what came into light from this is the weird, strange, and kind of backroom dealings of J.C. Tretter, who was the NFL president at the time, having to replace the executive director or lead the search for the executive director because DeMaurice Smith stepped down. And they ended up with this guy, Lloyd Howell, who worked at a consulting firm that had a big contract with the government, that at the time had a settlement with the government for kind of like for committing fraud and kind of the level of contracts they were doing. Not the best of dudes, basically, to necessarily represent the player's interest. It was a very odd pick, and it kind of also got more odd where it very much from the outside looked like after J.C. Tretter couldn't serve as president anymore because, not to mention collusion again, but no team would sign him, even though he was still probably one of the top 15 centers in the league. J.C. Tretter got this new position appointed by Lloyd Howell to be like a special advisor to the NFLPA and take on a full-time role there. Now, J.C. Tretter went to Cornell, studied unions and labor rights there, and this feels like this really good story about kind of how he could be doing good in it. And something that I will say that J.C. Tretter is responsible for, which is a big part of our lives now, is the report cards of each team.
Yeah, I've heard that over the years. Yeah.
And that's been a big deal. We do podcasts about it. The teams are pressured into building better facilities, treating their players better. That is like a great thing that he was able to do. But the way the first episode of this Pablo Torre thing leaves is like, why was this thing sealed? Why didn't anybody know about it? And what are Lloyd Howell and J.C. Tretter doing to represent the best interests of their union if they're not sharing this with people, that there was a collusion case that basically almost went in their favor? So the episode comes out. Surprise, surprise, the union appeals the arbitration ruling right after the episode comes out. And then more stuff starts to come out about Lloyd Howell, specifically how he likes to go to strip clubs. And he also likes to go to strip clubs when his employer is paying for it. That includes Booz Allen, his last employer, and also literally paying you with the union money to go to strip clubs as the NFL executive director. Unfortunately, that's not even the worst thing that he was involved in as executive director, because he also had another job that not a lot of people knew about, where he was consulting with this private equity group that oversaw the implementation of other private equity money getting infused into NFL ownership groups. So it turns out that the executive director of the NFL had a side job where he was moonlighting as someone who was directly influencing private equity money coming into ownership groups with owners, which seems like a little bit of a conflict of interest when you're supposed to be representing the players and their best interests. And a lot of people at that point had kind of wondered if he was a Manchurian candidate, where the NFL was really kind of just pulling the puppet strings. And that's about as big of a smoking gun as you can find for someone who should be leading a union. And the second episode of Pablo Torre with Mike Florio gets into this. He finds original recordings where he's talking about, where Lloyd Howe is talking about private equity money down at the New Orleans Super Bowl, and basically uncovers the fact that he's kind of just been doing this in plain sight for a really long time. And it continues to question something else about J.C. Tretter, where a couple years previous, he went on the Ross Tucker podcast and basically advocated for players to use any kind of leverage they could to hold out. And he basically said on this podcast, you should basically fake an injury if you want to hold out so that they have to pay you. And this was when Saquon Barkley was trying to get a new deal with the Giants. And so what we found out was part of the reason what it looked like that this arbitration that we found out about the collusion was sealed was because there was another arbitration case brought against the NFLPA where the owners said, hey, your union leader just told you to basically do wildcat strikes. And that's also not part of the collective bargaining agreement. So what it looked like after the second Pablo Torre episode, which I encourage everyone to listen to, is it looked like J.C. Tretter was really covering his own ass. And especially because it came out after Lloyd Howe resigned that one of the two people being strongly considered for the new executive director role was J.C. Tretter. So it really looks like he is very much little fingering this entire situation. It's a tough look. I was disappointed and sad because you want the people that you love the most to be doing good, and you hold them to a higher standard. You don't hold the billionaires to a higher standard. You expect them to be billionaires. That's okay. All of this to say, Tretter comes out on Sunday, gives an hour-long interview to CBS Sports, basically clearing his name, saying a lot of stuff that was reported wasn't necessarily true. Lloyd Howe wasn't my pick. There was a lot of other things where he didn't know about the arbitration before it happened or before other people found out about it. So he's just quitting. He's like, I don't want anything to do with this anymore. I don't want my name to be dragged through the mud. Deuces. I'm out. But where it leaves us is this huge imbalance, even when they find a new executive director, between the billionaires who want 18 games in a weak union and players that they can just shuffle through, and a union that's really completely lost, rudderless, and seems like there's a lot of rot from a lot of people in executive roles there outside of those mentioned that are not really putting the players in the best opportunity to continue to get this guaranteed money that they deserve, or pensions or things like that going forward. So long ramble there, but happy to answer more questions or talk about it more if you want to.
No, it's good to understand a condensed version of what's going on there. I mean, I guess it's like if the NFL and the NFLPA can be working harmoniously on things that are, it's a tough line to walk for the NFLPA, because you're trying to get certain things for the players, but you're trying to keep the NFL side happy, also to keep your job, because the NFL sort of is the one hiring you. It's like the players are going to lose. They're never. It's just like the thing that, you know, baseball's got a lockout looming about guarantee or about salary cap. The players won't want it because it means the highest paid players potentially can't make the record breaking money, but there should be enough players that push for it. But the NFL, it's like the players just don't seem to have a voice. There is no, like, think about it, Peter. Like, there's been a hockey lockout, right? That has lost a season before. There's been several baseball lockouts. I don't ever hear anything about the NFL. You don't ever hear anything about the players being so organized. You know, that's what maybe the most far-fetched movie ever made was The Replacements. You know, that's where I'm at with it. Because there should be, like, let's put it this way. This is just my opinion. You can shut it down. We'll move on. But, like, we've watched secondary leagues now for a while. We've watched the the XFL. We've watched the USFL. This is my point. We have not watched them. And like the players hold all the leverage if they could all just agree to shut out some things here and keep the season. Like, imagine there's not NFL football in September in your life and what that will do to everybody. The players seem to have what perceptionally should be a lot of leverage, yet you never hear of things that is them organizing in a way that means real change.
A couple things to think about from what you said. First of all, The Replacements, great movie. However, if you think about it, not a very pro-union movie. The heroes in that movie are the scabs.
It's the owner, isn't it? I thought I thought that the owner ended up being one of the heroes too, because
but the heroes also like Keanu Reeves and all these players, Jon Favreau, all these dudes. They're scabs. They're crossing the picket line, and who looks like the bad guys is all of the players who are holding out. So just something to think about next time you watch that movie of, who's indoctrinating who there. That being said, another thing that I think that's hard about the NFL union is...
Wow, they're arguing over salary and the terms of their contracts. It seems like something they maybe... Anyway, I digress.
Who's the good guy there?
Yep, that's the question.
The other thing is, in that, it's a huge union. There's a ton of players on these teams, on 32 teams. What, 60 roster spots, basically, or 50 roster spots, 32 teams? That's 1,600 players. Baseball, less so. Basketball, even less. But also, these players cycle through and have a churn rate at the biggest union where it's probably really hard to find a level of consistency with guys who aren't willing to kind of do whatever it takes to get into the league. And that is the thing that I think the NFL holds up and holds to their advantage is, sure, should it be a relatively not the strongest players union? Sure. Is it going to be like Major League Baseball? Probably not. But at the same time, you would hope that at least the top of the union had the best interest of the players, and to see a lot of this stuff be withheld from the players themselves, these union members, is pretty unfortunate. And also, one thing I'll say too, as it relates to the Browns, is right or wrong, I think what Jimmy Haslam did was truly, if you believe in capitalism, the most kind of capitalistic thing you can do. He was like, I'm going to pay what I think is going to get the job done for us to make the best decision possible. Now, did it turn out to be the worst decision possible? Absolutely. But he was willing to defy the brotherhood of these other billionaire owners to do what he needed to do to help the fan base find success and the team find success.
Yeah, I would imagine it's clear he lost some support. I mean, you can't view it anything else, because at the time you thought maybe this would start a trend. That trend never happened, and it just was clear that he created animosity, right? So, we don't hear about that animosity because billionaires don't let things get to the public the way, some folks do. But yeah, you're right. He did whatever he thought he could do to get it done. Yeah.
And I think also there's, I don't know if it's also like the best thing when it comes to like baseball players and salary caps and all this stuff. Like, a free market is not always the best thing necessarily without some kind of regulation or standards. You look at that with the NBA, you look at that with the NFL. The salary cap and those things make the parity more available, and also make things interesting in off season and things like, and roster building and things like that. So, I think JC Treader, I would definitely encourage people to also read the CBS Sports article interview that he gave and listen to the Pablo Torres episodes, because it also just talks about the economics of the macroeconomics of the NFL is so clearly going to play 18 games, and they're going to basically need to bully the union into making that happen if they want to do it before the CBA comes up. And it's really just going to be interesting to see how this stuff plays out and how it affects also the product of the football that we love to watch. It's pretty clear that it's 17 games is a little more taxing and is a war of attrition on all these teams. Like, the Browns have played with a lot of injuries, but they're not in the top. I mean, they're in the top half of the league, but there's been more teams with more injuries, and playing 17 games is a ton. Like, I think very clearly where they're going is Everyone will have 2 bye weeks. We play 18 games, and the Super Bowl is on President's Day Sunday, and everyone has off on Monday. That seems like we all know we're going there. You said this to me earlier, where you knew once there were renderings of Brook Park, we were going to Brook Park. There's no doubt about that. And so it's very clear you just want a union that is able to support and represent the players, because a strong union actually means a better product on the field, because everything that the owners want is not necessarily reflecting what we get to watch as the best product as fans.
Well said, man. And I think until you see some traction with a united front from the players, and maybe this pushes that direction, I don't know, but the NFL, like you mentioned well there's the counter to what I said, where you're only in the league for so long. So if I walk away for a year and we say we strike, and well, like I can't do that, I can't afford that, my window is 7 years maximum. Like the owners have the perfect setup. I mean, it couldn't be more perfect for them. So that's what makes the Texans' decision mystifying and has upset the status quo, and then also what is also upset with Deshaun Watson. But that's it. I just have been meaning to. And then before we could get to the first initial wave of that information, then the whole thing fell apart, and you're seeing Hal walk away, which is a huge deal. Then you're seeing Treader leave after his name. We're like, what? His name is being mentioned to run this thing? So it was really messy. So hopefully you guys feel a little more clarification on that, if nothing else. So, Peter, thanks, man. Thanks for listening to someone else and then passing that someone else on to us.
Hey, man, nothing makes a good podcast like explaining other podcasts.
It's a foolproof method. All right, we're going to take a break, come back, and we will talk about tight ends, the preview of that room specifically. So stick around. We'll go through that. And then we got some good stuff coming with Peter in future episodes this week as well. So he'll be frequent on the show this week. That's it for now. Taking a break. If you're on the free side, this is it for today. All the more reason to come over to brownsfilmbreakdown.com and join us and unlock the premium Spotify channel, ad-free, and many other great features. Take advantage of that. Do it. We'll be right back.